A friend of mine at work came up to me the other day and said, "I think I need your help with some G.I. Joes." And I asked him, "What's going on?" And he said he's got a bunch of G.I. Joes that he had pulled out of his mother's house. I think it was his mother's house. They'd been in a crawl space for a while, and they were some of his most prized toys from childhood, and he wanted to keep them, but unfortunately they were in a sad state. And he said that his wife was starting to look at them like junk, and he needed to kind of spruce them up a little bit. So he handed me this bag, which I have it right here, and asked me if I would take a look and see what was in there and what could be fixed. So I'm gonna look in here and start putting some G.I. Joes back together. I don't know what I'm gonna find, but I've got my screwdriver and I've got the proper equipment. I've got the screws and I've got the gaskets. So let's see what's in this bag. Looks like there's a nice collection in here, although I am finding some Star Wars figures. Greedo, that's a stormtrooper. Oh, look at that. Gabriel Lone Ranger. You don't see many of those anymore. It's a good one to have. So as you can see, I've gotten everything out of the bag now, including a large bin of weapons. Weapons and other pieces that I'm now trying to sort out. It looks to me like this was a collection that was heavily played with, which is what they were meant to do, so that's good. And I've designated them into piles, so these are figures that need new rubber bands right now, and these are figures that might be able to wait. Some of them are in good shape, and then there's the Star Wars figures and the Lone Ranger over there. But it looks like there's a mix of some early Joes as well as some late Joes. Looks like there's more mid to late Joes here than early ones. So I'm going to have to go into the internet and find out a cross-reference for a lot of these parts and pieces. But that's later. Right now we just need to get these figures put back together and see what we've got left to work with. We have an early success here, one that I can't even boast to have. I know he's not an uncommon figure. You can get him all day online, but it's great to see him here is Falcon. The amazing thing about this Falcon here is that he still has, I don't know if you can see this, he still has a complete backpack with the antenna and the combat knife still on it. The antenna always disappears and the combat knife is easily broken. This one's in great shape, so I'm not going to mess with it. And there he is, Falcon. Early success right out of the gate. I don't know if we'll have that much success with the rest of this collection, but this is a nice one to have, and he looks good, and he's got tight joints, and I'm excited. I think there's a lot of potential here. I've gotten a few more together. As you can see, I've gotten Shockwave here, and the second version of Storm Shadow. That's a very desirable character, and this one hasn't yellowed at all. I was also able to put together Ace. A lot of these figures are not in terrible shape. I mean, they're in played with condition, which I guess to some people is not desirable. But you know, for me, this is how I was used to seeing figures from when I was a kid. I'm looking at these and I'm thinking they still have the dust of the 1980s on them, which has its own charm for me especially. There's something unique about going through a childhood collection and, you know, seeing the scuffs and the scrapes and kind of putting yourself in that world for a moment. It was almost your world, but it wasn't. It wasn't your toy growing up. It was someone else's, and I don't know. I find the process to be it's like watching an aquarium. While I'm working on things like this, it's very calming, but it also takes me back to a place that I like to revisit in my mind, and this gets me a little closer to that. In total, it took me about 3 hours to finish this. A lot of parts and pieces to go through. A lot of these are later figures, so I had to go on yojo.com a lot to figure out what was here. But the end result isn't bad. everything, as you can see, is now organized in bags, and I'm going to provide a courtesy hinged shoebox. They look pretty good. Some of them are, missing a piece here and there, maybe a backpack or an extra weapon. A lot of them are in great shape, though, and now with a lot of the O-rings in place, they're going to survive a lot longer. So I think it's great that people care about their childhood collections, and even if they don't have the time or the energy because of kids or work or whatnot to preserve them themselves, that they take the effort to reach out to someone else who's willing to help. And at RetroBlasting, we're willing to help. So here's a great collection that's now preserved and doesn't look like a bag of junk, and hopefully that will allow it to stay in the house of the original owner for a long time to come. So until next time. And while I was scouring through these, I found the top half of a straight arm Cobra officer. What's funny about this is that, well, for one, I can't find the bottom of him, but the back where his screw is put in, there's a large hole drilled around it, as if someone didn't have a screwdriver small enough to get to the screw, so they started drilling out his back to try and get to it. I'd love to know what the story behind that was.